Hey headphone people, welcome back to the channel. MrAyrit here. Got another top of the line headphone review for you today. This one is for the Audeze Diana TC. So this is kind of their latest model, latest greatest as of the time of making this video. And I don't know, my review might be a little controversial on this one. So it's a impressive headphone. But I'm not sure it's going to be for everybody, and it's not for me. So let's kind of talk about why that is. As usual, we'll look at build, packaging, all that stuff first, and then we'll start getting into the sound. So packaging is refreshingly just simple and small. It's funny. I've had all these high-end headphones coming to me lately, and honestly, these boxes are getting to be kind of a burden. So I was super impressed and kind of just appreciated that the Diana came in such a nice small package. And then you open it up, and then basically all you've got here is just this little kind of canvas and leather carrying pouch. And then you open that up, and there's the headphones and the cable inside, and that's pretty much it. So pretty simple, and I appreciate that. And, they don't need to put it in a hard case because this thing is a freaking tank, dude. I mean, the build quality of this thing is just, wow. It's impressive. It really is impressive. We'll talk about that more here in just a minute. And then for accessories and stuff, it really doesn't come with much. The one I'm testing here just comes with a 4-pin XLR cable, and it's got the little proprietary jacks that go in the back of the headphones back here. It's I dislike that the cable is set up the way it is. I wish it was just a 3.5 like a Hifiman headphone, so I could just switch cables as I pleased. Went and took a look at their website, and these cables, they're selling them for about $550 a piece. So, if you want to get a new cable, I don't know what other options are out there for it. That's just something to be aware of if you get into one of these guys. So, let's look a little more in depth at the build, because I do feel like it's kind of something to behold. So, leather ear pads, metal, super well machined, headband, leather, Alcantara, I don't know how to say that, on the bottom. I love these pads, that they're magnetic, and then, if you've seen these headphones before, you pull them off and you can see inside, and gosh, they just are so cool looking, this feels like a 21st century headphone, and just everything about it screams, precision, high tech, well done. And I just love, you take the pads off of this thing and look at what this thing is, right? Once you get it down there, it is just so, it's just cool. It's really cool, So I really like that about it. It's just a really interesting headphone, the way it's built. The pads, it's interesting because they kind of have, you can rotate them around and get them, which is cool because they secure no matter what way you orient them on here. And that's a good thing because this headphone has some unique properties, and some of it depends on whether or not you break the seal with your head, and how big of a gap you leave and stuff like that, which is pretty cool and not super intuitive. So we'll get into that here in a little bit. So I really have nothing about the build that I could possibly complain about. The comfort, on the other hand, I think isn't all that great personally for me, especially when you get it set up, the pad set up the way I like them the best as I was using them. I didn't find particularly comfortable. So, it's not a big plushy comfy headphone. It's also not terrible. but it just, for me, I don't know. I got a lot of other headphones on hand right now, and for me, by far, I think the Hifiman stuff is the most comfortable. So like the Susvara and the HE1000 V2, I would wear those headphones all day long. These, I'm not sure that I'd want to. Also, I'm using them on the smallest setting. So I mean, you can see the cool little carbon fiber slide they got in there, but my head's rather small, and these I had to use on the smallest setting, and I even had to like even tilt them forward a little bit to keep them like nice and snug the way I wanted them. So if you got a small head, you might be wary of these. So that being said, let's talk about the pads and how you need to situate them, and then that will lead us into sound. So the pads, like, this is how I ended up having them. So I ended up having them with the crease up to the front, and so what this does is it puts the pressure kind of up here in front of my ears and in my temple area, and then it leaves a little gap open in the back here. Now, initially when I put these on, and I had the pads with the seam in the back, and that's how I would get like a good seal with them, and I thought, wow, I always thought Abyss headphones had like a lot of bass, but if you have a good seal with these, like the bass is really, really subdued, like extremely subdued, which I thought was contrary really to anything I'd ever heard about Abyss headphones. Then I was chatting with Headphone member SA11297. He's who loaned these to me for review, so thanks to him for that. And he said, no, you got to break the seal. He's like, once you break the seal, then the bass comes in, and wow, did it. So very unintuitive, because it's kind of like if they're sealed and tight against your head, you don't get a lot of bass. You break the seal a little bit, you know, that bass comes in, and then if you kind of like hold them off your head like this, like they really put out some bass. So just interesting the way that they work, and like I said, kind of counterintuitive to what probably most of our experiences are with headphones, where like you need that good seal to get that bass response. Not so with these. As a matter of fact, it diminishes it. So that was interesting. So that was kind of one of my first experiences with this headphone sonically, and that was interesting. And the other thing that I noticed right away was just how technically impressive these are. Just the resolution, detail, is all just really, really top notch on these headphones. So I'm going to show you, like, as I talk about this, I'm going to show you a ranking list that I've made for these kind of higher end headphones that I've had lately, just because I was fortunate enough to have them all at one time. And somebody asked me to make a ranking list, and I thought, yeah, that might be a good way to try to, crystallize some of my thoughts about these super high end headphones. So I'm going to pull that up, and I'm going to kind of like explain to you where this sits in there, and then we'll talk about the sound as we go through that. But just know the performance of this thing is pretty outstanding. So if I pull up here my ranking list. Okay, so I've got my little ranking list pulled up here, and I've highlighted the TC in blue so you can kind of keep track of it while we're going through some of this. And I'm just going to let you know kind of like where I think it stacks up again against some of these other things. Now, this is where it might get a little controversial, because I did not rank, this was not my top 2, not even my top 3. This, I felt, came in about number 4 for me in my ranking list. And there are several reasons for that, because it's interesting because it's at the top of a couple of categories. But ultimately, for me, it doesn't come together in like a cohesive package that I really want to use a whole heck of a lot. Which is kind of a sad thing to say about like a $4,500 headphone. Now, that's not saying that it wouldn't be for some people. I'm sure certainly it would be. Just for me, this is how it stacked up against some of the other things that I've had on hand and had the pleasure to listen to. Now, namely, I'm going to be comparing it to the Susvara and the LCD5 from Audeze. And those are my top two, okay? So that's mainly what we'll be comparing it to, and I will have full reviews of those headphones coming out in the near future, just so you know. But back to the Diana, we'll try to stay focused on that. So again, you can see, first of all, build, I've got highlighted, it's a 6 out of 7. So I think, except for the D8000 Pro, which I thought was just phenomenally built, this is right up there with that, and in a lot of cases I feel like it could be better than that. I just really enjoyed the build of the D8000 Pro. Comfort, though, is where this guy really gets knocked down a peg, just because, again, that's like the way the pad's situated just don't jive with me, right? Okay, so getting into sound. Once I opened up the seal, man, the bass just comes in, and it comes in hard, and there's a lot of quantity, but it's really high quality as well. Lots of texture, super well defined, just very, very enjoyable bass on this. So if you're a bass person and you want like quantity and punch and a super dynamic slam, like this is going to be right up there with something like the Utopia. Unfortunately, I didn't have the Utopia on hand when I was doing this, so I didn't include it in my ranking list really, but I really did like that headphone, and you can go watch my review of that if you want, but I have like kind of higher end gear and stuff on hand now. So it's not super fair, but like, anyway, this thing slams, right? So 6 out of 7 headphones, this one ranks. So right up there at the top. The one that beats it out, I think, is the LCD5. This one, the Diana, wins easily in quantity, but I just think the bass on the LCD5, while it's not a huge quantity, man, just the quality of it is so good. I just found it super, super enjoyable. I thought it was just a smidge better than the Diana TC. So the LCD5 wins out on the bass. Now, vocals and mids and those, those middle frequencies, that's really, I would say, the weak point of the Dianas. I just didn't find them to have an incredibly natural timbre to them. And that's super important to me because I am a very heavy vocal music listener. I listen to a lot of acoustic music with strings and pianos and vocals, right? So if a headphone doesn't do that well, it's just not going to make the cut for me. And I thought out of all the headphones that I had on hand that I was testing, and this even includes the cheaper things like the HE1000 V2 cheaper, right? And the HE6 SE V2, I thought their mid-tones, while maybe not as detailed as on the Diana, I just thought they were more true to life and just enjoyed them more. So keep in mind that this is my super subjective ranking list. So if you aren't a big vocal music listener and you're more instrumental and you're more like electronic, I could see you going for these in a heartbeat, right? But not for that acoustic stuff, at least not for me. We jump on over to the treble, and again, this one's a 6 out of 7, only being bested again by the LCD5, which both the LCD5 and the Diana are just super highly resolving technical headphones. Just amazing amounts of detail with both of them. I just enjoyed the treble a little bit more on the LCD5, and again, I think it has just a little smidge of an edge in speed and detail over the Diana TC. So I really enjoy the LCD5 in that regard. Okay, we jump over to timbre, and this is again where the Diana misses out, right? It's 2 out of 7, getting beat by everything but the RAL SR1A, which I also didn't really like. That headphone just didn't really jive with me. I just didn't feel like it sounded quite true to life, natural. So while this headphone is amazingly technical and has super high performance as far as just like detail and speed and texture and all that, I just didn't feel like it translates to, for me, like a super natural sound. I thought this was a more energetic, more exciting. I almost thought it seemed kind of like a W frequency response, in that there was like a lot of bass. Actually, it's probably more of a U, really, now that I think about it. It's probably a lot of bass the mids and vocals are kind of pulled back a little bit, and then the treble comes back with a lot of energy. So yeah, I'd say maybe more of a U, now that I'm thinking about it. And so I guess that's just not my sound signature, is what it comes down to, right? I thought the LCD5 did a phenomenal job with timbre, but for me, the Susvara really is the headphone that, like, I would pick if I had to pick any of these. And while I don't think it's quite as technically impressive as far as when I'm looking at the Diana TC and the LCD5, I just think the whole package of the Susvara meets more of my preferences. Spatial presentation, I also rated the Diana TC fairly low. I didn't get a great sense of space listening to this headphone, and I think that's just to me because it is such an engaging, like, exciting sound, that I don't feel like I can kind of relax and get the more nuanced pieces of music that I feel like contain a lot of that spatial information. So for me, I didn't get a great sense of space listening to the Diana, although it is reasonably wide. It's not like it's super congested or anything like that. I just think that some of these other headphones do that so well, that as I was comparing, it just didn't do it for me. For image separation, this guy's middle of the pack. It is pretty good at image separation. Again, I think it just suffers a little bit in this category because, again, I feel like I don't get quite as much nuance out of this as I do with some of those other headphones. So it's still good, still definitely super clean and clear and very precise. Just, again, as far as like a total package and placement within kind of like a soundstage, I just didn't quite get the same level of detail in the Diana as I do with some of those other high-end headphones. For dynamics, the Diana is number one, right? Like, it is number one. It is significantly more powerful sounding than I would say any of these other headphones that are on this list. And that was one of the key words that kept popping into my mind as I was listening to the Diana TC is, wow, this thing is a powerful sounding headphone. And because of that, I had my dad, and there's a video, like I'll link it down in the description, where we just kind of spend an afternoon listening to all these together and then talking about them a little bit. And his favorite was the Diana TC because of that super powerful sound. He felt like it was more like being there. Like he just felt like it was a more true to life experience just because of the energy that these things have. And he is a big live music fan too, so he would probably know better than I would. But like I said, for me, that's not the way I perceive it. But again, that just goes to show you like different strokes for different folks, right? Like some people are really gonna think that this headphone does it all, and it might be the end all be all for some people. Just for me, I walked away with a different impression than my father did with it. So that's something to keep in mind here. But definitely dynamics, this guy's got him. Certainly, I would say it's. I would love to compare this side by side with the Utopia. I wish I had the Utopia to compare in that regard. For resolution here, as we're looking at that, I think the Diana TC is, I gave it a 6 out of 7, only beaten by the LCD5. Again, I just feel like the LCD5 just edges it out just a little bit more with resolution capabilities. And so the next category I have is practicality, which is just like, I mean, it's just what it sounds like everyday use. What do I feel like with these headphones? And I rated this one a 4, mainly because of like the comfort issues, and it does need quite a bit of power to be driven well. I was mainly driving it off the RAL Requisite HSA1B, and I also did my Burson Soloist 3XP. Quite a bit, and I thought both of those drove it fine. I probably preferred it on the RAL Requisite just because that thing's just like a little bit smoother while still being super resolving. So just because it does need a decent amount of power, I rated it a little bit lower, and because I don't feel like it's quite as comfortable for long-term wear as some of the other things on my list here. Relax listening. This guy is lowest of the bunch. And that could be a good thing for you, or it could be a bad thing. It's not a chill headphone. It is intense. It is intense experience. But then, so on the other side of that, excited listening, this one wins the category because, again, it's just full of energy, super powerful, very engaging. So that's a give and take there, right? Like if you're good at relaxed listening, you're probably not going to be good at super exciting listening, and that's the trade-off that this makes in being super exciting. And so if we look at all the totals here for my categories, this comes in at 4th place with 53 points. The HE1000 V2 has 58, and then both the Susvara and the LCD5 tie at 71 points. And that's just, again, I ranked all the headphones in each category. It's not perfect. I did the best I could. Obviously, it's super subjective, but it does give, it at least was helpful for me in trying to, like, how do you think about multiple, several $1,000 headphones in a way that's not just going to be like, oh yeah, it's great. Because really, if you're reviewing any of these in isolation, like that's what your experience is going to be, I think, is you're just going to think it's amazing, right? If you don't have something of equal kind of quality to compare it to, it's going to be phenomenal. It's a phenomenal headphone. It just ultimately isn't quite for me, but I don't really love those super exciting, powerful headphones most of the time. I'm more of a chill listener a lot of the time. And like I said, I'm more of a vocal heavy acoustic type person, and I don't feel like that's really this headphone's niche. But if you like instrumental music, if you like electronic music, if you want a lot of bass slam, if you want an exciting listen with tons of performance and resolution, I mean, this headphone has that. Is it going to be for everybody? I don't think so. But it is a wonderful headphone. It's a marvel, honestly, when it comes to just like the manufacturing and the technical capability. So all that, it's super cool. It's just not for me. And not when I've got the Susvara and the LCD5. I don't think I'd hardly ever reach for this. If it's me personally, that might be different for you. Either way, I hope this helps you kind of understand at least how it might stack up against those other headphones. Again, I'll be diving more in depth into those later. So stay tuned for that. Outside of that, drop questions, comments, alternative opinions down below. Where do you think these guys end up? Have you heard them? What are you comparing them to? I think that would all be great stuff for people to hear and help people make a decision, because I can't imagine very many people are going to be able to buy more than one, $4,000+ headphones. So any help you could lend in that regard in the comments below, I think would be very welcome from most people. I think that's going to wrap it up for the Abyss. Thanks again, SA11297, for sending this out. He also sent me the LCD5, so we'll have that one coming here real soon. And I hope to see you back at the channel for that one. So until next time.